So really the client acquisition to me looks like this in all businesses, is to dive deep into what you're best at, how you see what you do differently, what makes it marketable, and then ask the foundational question, who will love that? And then that defines the market. You figure out how you reach them, how you get in front of them. I honestly believe almost everything in the world is saleable. And then that's where my work with brand messaging really becomes important, because then you have to put out the brand message so that that client that you're meant to serve finds you.
The following is brought to you by Thrive, the end-to-end client experience platform that helps you get the job, manage the job, and get credit.
Hey, this is Gordon Henry at Winning on Main Street, and this week you get to meet Jeffrey Shaw. Jeffrey started out as a portrait photographer who made it to the big time. He was a go-to photographer for C-suite executives, supermodels, sports icons, Wall Street executives. His portraits appear on the Oprah Show, CBS News, they even hang at Harvard University in the Norman Vincent Peale Center. And after 35 years doing this, Jeffrey decided to share his knowledge of business, branding, and marketing to support self-employed and small business owners. He's an in-demand keynote speaker and the author of 2 books, Lingo and the Self-Employed Life. He's also a LinkedIn learning instructor and a regular contributor to various publications. He hosts a podcast called The Self-Employed Life, and you can find Jeffrey at jeffreyshaw.com. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Hey, Gordon, thank you for being here. And thanks for that fantastic introduction. It's always interesting to listen to your own bio, right?
So let's just start kind of at the beginning of your really interesting story. How did you go from being a portrait photographer to an author, speaker, and small business coach?
Yeah, I had to say, it's got to be the most common question I'm asked on and off podcasts, because I guess it's our journeys, the journeys we take, particularly when it leads us to self-employment, the journeys that get us there often seem really unusual to other people, but the fact of the matter is it's an iterative process, right? I mean, just one thing kind of connects to the other. So, I've been a portrait photographer for affluent families as their family photographer for 36 years now. So 25 years in, and I had a coach. I hired my first coach back in 1999 before it was even cool. And, because I thought it was an invaluable relationship, kind of that partner you want in your life that you don't want to share the profits with. So he retired in 2007 or so. And, I really missed the idea of coaching and I wanted to fulfill it. And it really stood out to me that I wanted to do for others what I had received from coaching. So that's when I started my coach training. Honestly, Gordon, thinking it was going to be a little thing I do on the side. But as is often the case, and I coach, one of the things that I coach on a lot are people transitioning from corporate to self-employment, something I do a lot of. It's most of my one-to-one clients. And the fact of the matter is, when you transition from one career to the next, once that idea gets in your head, there's no stopping it. And that's exactly what happened to me. Once I allowed the idea, like, wow, I could coach other people. What I found is that I loved building business, even if it wasn't my own. And sometimes it's more satisfying to see somebody else get the results of the work that you do than even for yourself. So I started coaching, received over 1,000 hours of coach training, became a coach. That leads to stages, in part to build your coaching practice, but also I was well known in the photo industry as a kind of an exceptional success story. So the photo industry started asking me to speak, but I wanted a much bigger impact than just in a single industry. So that's why I wrote my book, Lingo, which released in 2018. That was sort of my calling card out of the photo industry into a bigger realm. And then my latest book, The Self-Employed Life, just came out May 4th. And that's really, to me, really putting the stake in the ground, which has taken me, again, iterative process. It took me a little while to get there because I always thought I was for entrepreneurs. But when I really got down to it, the audience I care most about are self-employed business owners. Care about them to the degree that I see myself more of as an advocate than a coach or an author, but to really fight for their success. So again, one step after another, and next thing you know, here you are. But it all connects. And I do very little photography, so it's still in my life, but to a very small degree.
Yeah. Before we get to the small business coaching aspect of your life, which is what you do today, I do want to ask you briefly about your photo career. And in particular, maybe what are 1 or 2 of the most exciting photo shoots you've done? I noticed on your long list of celebrities that you've done portraits of. One was Tom Seaver, the Mets coach.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you personally, as a kid growing up in the New York suburbs in the 60s and 70s, Tom Seaver was my absolute hero, like so many kids. And I still remember, number 25 winning the World Series games for the Mets in 1969, the amazing Mets. What was it like shooting a guy like Tom Seaver?
And I'll tell you what, I'm not even a sports guy, never have been, but I understood the privilege I had in photographing Tom Seaver and his family because of also growing up. It's like he was iconic. Mm-hmm. And, I think part of what made me successful is that as a photographer is because I wasn't, it's a delicate balance between demonstrating your respect for those that you photograph when they are celebrities or very wealthy. I mean, you don't want to ignore the 25,000 square foot mansion you're sitting. I mean, it would be stupid. You'd look like an idiot if you didn't acknowledge it's beautiful, but at the same time, not be affected by it. And I think I walked that line very well because that's actually how I felt. I'm like, hey, it's beautiful. Doesn't mean I want to live that way. Doesn't, I have respect for it, but it didn't move me. And I think, so photographing people like Tom Seaver and Pat Riley. I actually photographed a lot of sports people, a lot of news journalists because I was out, based in New York City. I will tell you, a couple things stand out to me in my journey as a photographer, and Tom Seaver represents that perfectly. He is everything that you would want him to be. I mean, the nicest, gentlest, loving to his wife. And this is one of the things I love about photography is somehow when I got behind that massive camera, even though I'm looking through the lens, somehow people think I'm not there. They forget that I can still see. And it's in those moments when I saw a husband reach over and touch his wife's leg or rub her back. That's when I got the real essence of who that man was. And that was the case with Tom Seaver. Just a loving, just everything you'd want him to be for somebody you've upheld as an icon. And I have to say, Gordon, overall, that was my experience in 36 years of photographing this clientele. I grew up very, very low middle class. So I had heard all the stereotypes about wealthy people, none of which I found to be true. I found the people I photographed to be unbelievably kind people, raising great children, contributing to their communities. And the other thing that really stood out to me, I was surprised at how involved they were in the mindset of success. Because we think that by that time they got to the level, maybe they didn't think about mindset, or maybe they were handed their wealth. But I tell you, they would light up when we would somehow get in a conversation about mindset. And next thing I know, we're not even photographing. We're like sitting down and talking about the power of mindset and how that affects your success and daily affirmations and daily habits and routines to keep yourself going. And I loved that and didn't expect it. So it was one of the standout experiences for me, is realizing that, truly success at all levels truly is built on mindset.
Fantastic. So turning to you and your career as a photographer and then eventually keynote speaker, author, and coach, according to your LinkedIn profile, which I looked at, you've been working for yourself for 36 years, or I guess over 36 years now.
Yeah.
Is it true you've never worked for anybody else?
No, I've never received a paycheck. I've never worked for anybody else. I started, the leading story of my book, The Self-Employed Life, is at 14 years old, I started selling eggs door to door. I grew up in the country. And it was an interesting area because it was the reason my family moved. I was moved there when I was 3. And the reason we moved there is my father was one of the first 90 employees at IBM when they were a startup. And this was going to be their production plant, which of course turned out to be the largest computer production plant in the world in its heyday. So it was an interesting area because they moved there because it was cheap land. It was all farmland. And everybody that worked for the company was brought in from other areas, largely New York City. So you had a bunch of New York City folks. We lived down county, but we had, everybody was a transplant for somebody else and nobody really wanted to be there except for the job. Right. So you had a bunch of people that didn't know what to do living in the country. And that's when I kind of honed in on this idea, like, oh, I could sell farm fresh eggs because that's like a whole cachet. And I killed it as a 14-year-old I killed it selling eggs door to door. And that was I look back now and realize that was the beginning of my entire mindset about being self-employed. I learned so many incredible lessons doing that. And that's why I start my book off with that story, because there's some profound business lessons in there that stick with me to this day.
Hmm. So how did you as a photographer go about acquiring such high level clients? Client acquisition is a problem every small business faces, right? How do I keep the steady stream? You seem to do it pretty effortlessly. Is that correct or maybe not?
Effortlessly on, Facebook and not from the outside world, but, but I know client acquisition is one of your specialties. So, to be honest, when I got out of photography school, I went back to my hometown, and there was a complete disconnect such that 3 years in, I was failing, right? But thankfully I was only 23 years old. But even at 23, I had already been married for 3 years, because that's what you do in the country. You get married young. I was married young. I had an apartment. I had expenses. But more importantly, what stood out to me is this is the only thing I knew. Had no other education. I went from high school, took a year off, went to photography school. So I needed to make a living on this skill set. And it's all I knew. So it was scary, regardless of whether you're 23 years old or 53 years old. It was scary to not have a business work. And what do we normally do when our businesses aren't working? We work harder. And I found that wasn't the problem. The problem was I was completely misaligned with the market. And because I was charging the premium, as large a premium price as I could as a photographer, and realizing that the market didn't support it. Not only financially, they didn't value it. And that brought up the question, well, then who values this? It took a lot of soul searching, even at 23 years old, to realize that I was actually meant to serve an affluent clientele. And not because the roads are paved with gold or anything like that, but because they had a similar value system to what I did. I valued long-term thinking. At 19, I had life insurance since the age of 19 years old. I'd always planned ahead. Photography innately, particularly high-end portrait photography, is innately an investment in the future. Right? Portraits to be handed down, portraits that are going to preserve children's memories. People that are struggling to get by month to month, that's not a value to them. So really, the client acquisition to me looks like this in all businesses, is to dive deep into what you're best at, how you see what you do differently, what makes it marketable, and then ask the foundational question, who will love that? Okay. That to me is client acquisition. And I've done that at every stage of my business and the businesses that I've helped build, is who will love that? And then that defines the market. You figure out how you reach them, how you get in front of them. I honestly believe almost everything in the world is sellable. There's somebody out there for everything. You have to figure out who are you for. And then that's where my work with brand messaging really becomes important, because then you have to put out the brand message so that that client that you're meant to serve finds you. They see you, you put yourself in the right place. It's foundational to all my work is this one simple lesson. And this is really foundational to the self-employed life. When you're self-employed, when you're a small business owner, it is by and large uncontrollable circumstances, right? Economies change, trends change, global pandemics come along. It's uncontrollable circumstances. The only thing you can control is the environment you create for the results you want, right? You have to control the environment. Who do you want to serve? Who are you meant to serve? Control the brand message you put out, control how you're found. You do that, it's what I teach in the book as the self-employed ecosystem. You set that up in a healthy way, you have a strong chance of success.
Right. Control the controllables, some people say.
Yeah. And that's why I'm a big proponent of mindset and daily habits, because you also want to keep, nonetheless, it's still uncontrollable, but you have to not get derailed. If you're in this for the long haul, you also have to have consistent mindsets to keep yourself going, so that you don't let those uncontrollable circumstances derail you. But it's a system, which is why I deliver it in the book as the self-employed ecosystem, broken up of three main elements: personal development, business strategies, and daily habits. All three elements need to be firing at 100% in order to have a thriving ecosystem for your self-employed business.
We typically hear that small businesses that run into problems, and inevitably all businesses run into problems, are things like cash flow. That's a typical one. Or, they just can't stay organized and things get sort of out of control. Are those the real problems that you focus on, or are those sort of symptoms of a bigger problem? What typically goes wrong?
They're most definitely symptoms. In fact, I've gone as far as, once the book was launched, I went as far as hiring someone to create a custom algorithm so that I could create a tool for people. And it's called the Self-Employed Assessment. People can grab that at selfemployedassessment.com. And what it does, it asks you 6 questions. How you answer those questions, the custom algorithm sorts through and defines which in those 3 areas of personal development, business strategy, and daily habits are you weakest in. Because I look at it as an ecosystem, I look for what's destroying the ecosystem, right? What the invasive species is in a way. And here's what I can say. I mean, I'm not going to over dramatize and say your business is at threat of going under if anything's off. But what I can guarantee is that you're working harder than you need to if any part of that ecosystem is off. And the number one thing I hear from clients, which is absolutely a symptom, people contact me and they say, I feel like I'm all over the place. Number one response I get from people when they reach out. And they really are. The fact of the matter is, when I dive deep into their business and all the parts of it, they actually have all the pieces. But because success in business, particularly when you're self-employed, is an iterative process, it's building on itself. The pieces are all over the place, right? So what I do, and again, this is kind of what goes right back to my photographer's brain. I see what other people can't see. I often see their potential. I always see what's marketable that they can't see. Okay. I can also take all those, just like a photograph is, like if you think of a photograph as a bunch of pixels, right? My brain naturally sees the pieces and imagines what it could be composed as a whole. So I love all the pieces. I thrive really well in that. And that's how I help people, because most people at some point feel like they're all over the place. And Gordon, honestly, it was one of my objectives with the book, which is why the book is so thorough. People refer to it as a resource book, because it has those 3 big elements of personal development, business coaching, daily mindsets. It doesn't exist. First of all, there are no books that actually help self-employed people. I've done my due diligence. They're all about taxes. Like, there are no books for self-employed people, for one. But the reason why I wanted to have kind of an all-in-one book is to solve that all over the place problem. Because innately, as a small business or self-employed, we've had to hire coaches for mindsets. We've had to hire gurus for marketing strategies. We've had to take courses. We attend conferences. How could we not feel like we're all over the place? Right. So it's one of the goals of the book, which I think the feedback has been tremendous on. People feel like, oh my gosh, this actually does represent the self-employed life. And that's why the word life is in there so prominently.
Right. In your latest podcast, you say the simple secret of success is the double meaning of a single word, platform.
Yeah.
The secret of success is the double meaning of a single word, platform. Can you explain what that means?
Oh gosh, I love this. And it's one of those things that you hear yourself talking about all the time and you don't actually put it out in the world. And I got around to doing a podcast on this because, I also pay a lot of attention to patterns, just like what patterns, what conversations do I seem to be having over and over again? And again, as I said, I see what other people don't see. And that's how I define what's marketable in the world. Like, what does the world need? Just pay attention. Like, you'll see patterns going on that lead you to understand what people need to hear at this time. So the double meaning of the word platform. So if you actually literally break down the definitions of platform, on one hand, and this truly is the simple secret to success. This is the 2 big buckets that I spend a tremendous amount of time coaching clients on. There's a lot of steps, but this is the simple secret. The first meaning of platform is a collection of your values, right? It's what you stand for. So Martin Luther King, for example, had a platform, right? He had a platform of values that he wanted the world to know about. Businesses need to understand, what are your platform of values? What makes you unique? What do you value? Whose values, what audience do you align with values? Okay, so the first work to be done is to truly understand your platform of values and what you stand for and what you have to offer that's unique. The other meaning of platform is the physical platform that you stand on, right? I'm a speaker. It's a wooden stage, or it could be a podium, right? So the other meaning of platform is what you stand on. That's the other thing that a business needs. Nowadays, your platform is probably largely your website, but it's your online marketing. That is truly the simple secret of success. Now, again, it's a process of multiple steps, and one that I don't think anyone can actually do themselves. They need coaching and support, because you can't read the label from inside the jar. It's really hard to do it on your own. But what you need to do is figure out, what do you stand for? What makes you unique? How do you see what you do differently? How is it marketable? Who is it marketable for? And what do they value? You get that and you're like, okay, now I need to let the world know about that. Let me build the platform of expertise, the website, the messaging, the social media posts. When I do this work with my clients, it's a deep coaching work to get to understand all the values. I tell you that once they get it, once they get their own core message or the core message of their business, building the physical platform becomes so crystal clear. And if you look at the pattern of a lot of really successful people like Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, it's kind of what I call as brand association, right? Simon Sinek, why? That's what you think of. Brene Brown, vulnerability, right? There's certain word associations that you immediately have. I want the world to think Jeffrey Shaw, self-employed. Okay? And it's already happened in a short period of time. This book's been out there. And what that does, it also people know immediately who to refer you to. My rate of referral has skyrocketed since my book came out on May 4th, right? Because people are reaching out to me saying, oh, I know of a speaking gig, they're looking for somebody who knows self-employed, or, it becomes so clear because you are delivering a clear message of your values on a clear platform. It really is the simple secret to success, the double meaning of platform. It's just a lot of work to build out the two.
Great advice. We got to take a quick commercial break and we'll be back. And I want to next dive in a little bit more to the coaching and actually how you have helped entrepreneurs succeed. Be right back.
This episode of Winning on Main Street is brought to you by Thrive, the end-to-end client experience platform that includes everything small business owners need to meet their customers' expectations. Thrive's award-winning and fully mobile interface delivers technology previously reserved for big business to the fingertips of small business owners nationwide. Thrive's built specifically for small business, but there's nothing small about what it can do. Thrive handles your entire customer experience, helping business owners reach more customers, stay organized, get paid faster, and generate online reviews, all from a single device or screen. To learn more about Thrive, visit winningonmainstreet.com and click on Get a Demo. When it comes to software to run your business, there's no comparison. Check out Thrive today.
And we're back with Jeffrey Shaw. Jeffrey's just been telling us about his coaching programs and the need for you to have a single word or phrase that describes your business, your message, so that people can understand your value prop. And we're going to get into Jeffrey's coaching kind of methodology. And I want to ask you right out about the price tag. You charge $15,000 for a 6-month coaching program. Mm-hmm. That's not cheap, but there's a lot of value there. Who are the types of businesses that hire you, and what do they get out of it?
Yeah. So the 6-month work, and honestly, it's 6 months minimally. That's one-to-one work, and for that work, I have to say most of my clients that I work with are people that are transitioning from corporate to self-employment, right? So, the price tag is easier to bear because they've probably got a steady paycheck, but they know this is not their future, right? So they want to create something else, and often they come as a complete blank slate, and I help them actually figure out what's marketable, what's a business they can build. Because it's a whole, over 6 months, it takes 6 months to really kind of do that deep dive to figure out what's there, to kind of, as I say, stir up the dust, and then put it all back together again in a brand message and a strong platform. But in addition to that, I also have other programs, 2 months, 3 months, that address a specific issue. Okay. So one of the things I do a lot of is I help people create better brand messaging. And I can do that in 2 months. That's $5,000, where, I dive again, we still do a deep dive to figure out what is their core brand message? Who are they meant to be? Who are they meant to serve? How does that audience want to be spoken to? Again, my previous book being called Lingo, I'm really into understanding the lingo of your ideal customer, and then build out the brand message, usually resulting in a updated website. And I can get that done in 2 months. So that's a very specific goal. And then I have a 3-month program, which is $7,500, which is broader than that. That actually is working out the self-employed ecosystem. And that's why it's 3 months. So we spend 1 month really focusing on your personal development, getting yourself ready for the success you want to build. 1 month building out the business strategies that will make a difference in your business. And then 1 month making sure that you sustain that success with all your marketing and habits, et cetera. So I try to, I think in today's coaching world, and I've been coaching for a long time, and I've seen this morph and change, that you have to address both. A lot of people want to address a specific issue and they want to get in and get out. I mean, when I started out in coaching, it was minimally a year. I don't even go there anymore. I just start with a minimum of 6 months. And if you want to continue, great. But the people I work with don't want to mess around, right? They're ready for change. They want a big impact, and we try to get in there and fix it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, great stuff. I've told you that our product at Thrive is a software platform for small businesses. It's really a CRM system, but it's more than that. It's end-to-end software that helps businesses automate and organize and keep track of their customers. And most of our customers are service businesses, businesses typically that are doing something for your home, like roofing or plumbing or electrician, and then also service businesses that work on, say, your auto or maybe your landscaping. And what we hear right now is they have more work than they can handle, because people during the pandemic were looking around saying, my paint's peeling, I need a painter. Mm-hmm. They can't find workers, and they are having a hard time even getting supplies to fix things because the supply chains are disrupted. Mm-hmm. So given that landscape that so many businesses are facing right now, what do you recommend they do?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. And one thing that's driving me crazy right now as a business is, and I get it. I get all the challenges, right? I work with a lot of vendors. I have one of my vendors running over a month behind on something they were supposed to get to me a while ago. And, we want to exercise compassion and understanding, but at the same time, here's the harsh reality of being business, is that you want to do your best job when you have the most eyeballs looking at you. Here's a lesson from a child. Talk about lessons from your childhood. My family, which was large, to my grandparents and cousins, we had a family of about 26 people, who every year we went out for Mother's Day. And every Mother's Day, we'd go to a different restaurant. And Mother's Day is the busiest restaurant day of the year. And I would stand, as a kid, I would be 12 years old. I was always so interested in business. I was fascinated by how the fact that on the busiest day of the year, they would constrict their menu, right? So you had limited choices. They would jack up the prices, and the service was the worst day of the year. And I always thought how odd it was that your busiest moment, you're doing your worst job. And that is what I see going on now, that I would caution every business. I know it's really tough to get staff and all right now, but I'm telling you, if your business is cranking and you have a lot going on, leverage this. Your rate of referral could carry you for the next 5 years. This is the time. So, I encourage everyone to set aside excuses of what you're short of. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough staff. Don't make excuses, because your customers don't care about the excuses as much as you think. And it's such an amazing time to leverage what's going right. I would try to figure out whatever obstacles you need to get past it. Because I will tell you, even as a business person myself, I'm losing my patience on how often people are not delivering on promises, and the excuses, man, you have no idea how busy we are. There's a point where I don't care how busy you are. And here's the thing. So actually, I'll give you a direct comparison to my photography business. And here's how I solved it. So, I started out as an average photographer, struggling and getting clients, but there became a point where I became high in demand and I had an 8-week waiting list. But here's what I knew was going to be the problem. And luckily I hit the problem before it became a problem, because very aware that some of my earliest clients were calling my staff wanting to get a session, and the staff was saying it would take 8 weeks. Now, these are the people that built my career. These are the people that could call me up and get on a Tuesday and get a session on Saturday. Now they're being told they have to wait 8 weeks. That's not going to sit well, right? So how did I solve it? I solved it by creating the biggest win of my business ever. It was a win for them and a win for me. I created a program where every February, and the timing was February very specifically, because as an on-location photographer, I didn't do any photography January through April. Those were my months off. Because I lived in the Northeast at the time. I now live in Miami. I lived in Connecticut, New York, that area. So no photography outdoors January through April. So as cash cash flow wise, as you mentioned earlier, a really terrible time. I always had to harvest money during the busy season to carry me through. I also serve primarily Wall Street clientele. They get their bonuses in February or March. That's when they have their most amount of money. You want to tap into that money. So every February to this day, I still do it. We send out an offer. We call it the priority client prepay offer. They pay thousands of dollars towards any future session that year. We credit their account an additional $500. So there's a small discount in it for them. But that's not what's meaningful to them. What's meaningful to them is it gets that off their checklist. And I guarantee them, I ask them, when would you like your session? Just a range of time, October. I say, well, I will contact you 10 weeks prior to when you want your session so that you are ahead of our 8-week waiting list because you're a priority client. Okay. And that's how we buy it. And that is how you create loyal clientele. That's how so find a solution. And by all means, honor the people. Every time you say, I'm too busy to someone who has used you before, you've just annoyed them because it's their business with you probably got you that busy. So really turn it upside down. One of my biggest pet peeves in business is when I see businesses give discounts for new customers only.
Yeah.
Backwards. Especially if you're in a service-oriented business, your existing customers always come first. Give them priority, give them privilege, give them the extra service. And I had a 70% retention rate in my business, which means I only had to work hard to get 30% new business. That's a business that you want as a service business.
Yeah, great points. And I have to make the point again about the use of technology for small businesses, because the technology, at least for example, the Thrive technology, CRM type technology, is really all about making your business more efficient and more organized. And so, for example, if you can automate your client communications, first of all, you may not need to hire somebody to do that for you, or you don't have to spend your time on doing it. Things like reminders, reminder, we have an appointment tomorrow, reminder, we have an appointment in an hour. There was one client we had who was a guy who was the dog grooming, dog cleaning, dog walking, all those kinds of things, and animals in general. And he told me that he and his staff used to drive across town. He happened to live in the Detroit area, drive across town through traffic. And sometimes they would spend a half an hour to getting to a client only to find the client wasn't there. They got stood up. And then he would drive half an hour back to the office and he just wasted an hour. And when they adopted the use of our technology through the use of the reminders for the appointment, first of all, there was an electronic booking, not a paper, type of thing. The electronic booking, everybody got the reminder on their smartphone a day in advance, an hour in advance. The no-shows went way, way down, almost to nothing. And he never any more wasted time in traffic going to someone's house who wasn't there. Yeah. So that's just a simple example, but you take those kinds of things that happen in real life and it can make the business a lot more efficient. And that helps them in a time like this when there's too much business, quote unquote, too much business to be had.
Yeah, 100%. And first of all, you have to look at how much that's doing a favor for the client, because nobody feels good that they showed you up either, right? So you're actually really helping them. And you mentioned earlier about, most of your clients are service-based business. Personally, I think every business is a service-based business. If you're selling a product, there's a service element to it. And particularly if you're selling a product that in any way, a tangible product or software, if you've created something like you have with Thrive that saves people time, you are in the business of you're in a service business of saving time, right? It might be done through a technology, but I don't think anything has more value to people today than saving time, because we all are trying to get time back in our lives, and technology is the winner here. I actually, I have a talk that I've given a few times, which is on the idea that, from this point on, businesses will have a choice. Technology can either make their customers feel like one in a million or one of a million. The choice is yours. Right. And I personally think a proper use of technology customers know that, you have many customers, but you can make customized automation can make your customers feel like one in a million because you have made their life easier. What I refer to in my coaching, I refer to it as I help my clients build a frictionless business model. You want to have, that's where technology and components like Thrive can really help, because you want to create as frictionless an experience for your customers as possible, because you are serving them by giving them back time. Yeah, for the life of me, I won't understand why small businesses don't make getting paid easy. I cannot believe it's like, make it so easy to get paid. Make it easy for your customer to pay you at 2 a.m. because you know what? That's probably when they're finally getting around to it
That's
because
right.
they're busy, you know?
Absolutely. And, the businesses that are still sending out paper bills and expecting people to write them paper checks and then get a stamp and go to a mailbox, which less and less exists. So now you got to go to a post office. You're making your client do a lot of work. And frankly, most people have smartphones. Most people have some type of electronic payment. Thrive allows you to make those electronic payments. And as you say, you can do it when it's convenient for you. The other point I was just going to make in answering to your point about the frictionless was a simple idea like, hey, it's springtime, let me come out and help you with that spring cleaning or the lawn mowing or to set up your sprinkler system, or even a birthday message. Hey, everybody has a birthday and everybody likes to be getting birthday greetings. You put your clients' birthdays in, you can have your system set up, send out a birthday greeting to every single client. Didn't take any work on your part. You didn't have to do any time other than the one time you loaded in those birth dates. And now you've just touched every client. You may get new business from that just because they feel good.
Yeah, I would say even, and I'm a big fan of those personal touches. It's amazing how much business you can build just by doing things like that. Like I would say, if you're a landscape, for example, and your clientele are the parents, remember the children's birthdays would even be more important,
Mm-hmm,
right? Because that's what the kids care about more than the parents care about more than anything,
mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are the touches of the kids? Or, I say this particularly in service-oriented businesses, 90% of your marketing, and I'm just picking a number, but there's no research behind this, but let's say 90% of your marketing is giving people ideas how to use your services. I knew this as a photographer. There are only two parts of the photography industry that have an inherent demand: newborns and weddings. Okay. When people get married, there's an inherent demand. Nobody has ever woken up to think, oh gosh, I need a family portrait. It's a luxury item. It's not on top of mind. The reason I built my business is I gave them the idea all the time through my marketing, right? Is to point out those life moments. I've said this, I've spoken a lot in the real estate industry, and this is another example. Everybody I know, and my friends, and again, I look at business through the lens of observation, right? I'm a masterful observer, so I pay attention to everything in life and then look for patterns. Everybody I personally know, myself included, buys like the serious house after the second child is born. Why realtors don't target that market is beyond me. Like they should know every family in their community having a second child, because it is almost always, because you're that first child you can stick in a dresser drawer if you have to. It's like, you're a couple with a baby when you've had your first. That second one comes along, everybody I know has the same reaction. Like, okay, this is getting real. And now we're a family. It's usually when you're inspired to step up. It's like, what I refer to as emotional triggers. Know the emotional triggers. What are the life events? To your point about automation, we knew the age. We would start at the old. As soon as I got a new client as a photographer, I knew we would put in our system the ages of all the kids. So let's say they're 7, 5, and 3. We photographed the 3 kids. I always did individual portraits of the kids, as well as the family, as well as the kids together, and always stressed and parents would always understand when I explained. It's like, it's great to have family portraits and photographs of the children together. I said, but each of those kids on their own are going to want to have portraits of themselves for their future. I was also doing it because if I photographed the oldest, when the oldest was 7th, guarantee you, when that 5-year-old turns 7, we're going to reach out to that family and say, we need to photograph Susie because we photographed Johnny at the same age. What parent doesn't want their kids to be treated equally?
Right.
Right. Particularly the affluent clientele. It's one of their strongest emotional drivers, because when you have money, money is not an excuse. I grew up lower middle class, youngest of 3 boys. I accepted the reality that there's no photographs of my childhood. I got all the hand-me-downs. It's a reality you accept. It's not a reality that's acceptable in the affluent market. You can't send 2 of your kids to Ivy League and send the 3rd one to community college. It just that they're all about equality amongst their children. Knowing that, I leverage that. That's the beauty of automation. It's like, and all it took was a reminder on a system. shoot off an email. The client writes back. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful that you are on top of this. Let's book a session, and I make several $1,000s. Easiest marketing in the world.
Right. Great stuff. Well, Jeffrey, this has been awesome. We're just about out of time, but before we go, what's next for Jeffrey Shaw?
I'm actually just speaking of ecosystem. I mean, I've looked at what I've accomplished this year. I had a plan for a whole ecosystem in 2021. I hosted a 2-day online summit the month before my book came out. My book came out May 4th, launching the Self-Employed Life YouTube channel in the next 2 weeks. And then in August, I'm launching the Self-Employed Business School, which is the completion of the current objective of the self-employed ecosystem, because there just is no school out there for self-employed business, and this is not an MBA life. It might help, but it's a very different experience. So it's an online school. I'm launching that in August. Our first cohort will begin in September, and that's going to be the self-employed business school. So that's what's next.
Great stuff. Well, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
The book is called The Self-Employed Life, and you've heard about all the other associated products and ventures, and it's very exciting. So this has been Jeffrey Shaw, and we really appreciate Jeffrey joining us today. And if you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe and tell a friend or colleague to subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, make it a great week.